what we've got coming up in today's show.
I just see it when I'm a very visual person, and when I close my eyes, I see it. I'm there, and so it's easier for me to describe it. Having a map drawn is on the list of things to be done at some point.
Welcome to the All Things Books Show, hosted by award-winning best-selling mystery author Dawn Brooks. Publishing has changed beyond recognition in recent years. Join Dawn as she interviews authors, narrators, and many more from across the creative community. This inspiring and informative show is for readers and writers.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the All Things Book Show. And today I've got a fantasy author with me called Kate Ridley, who writes for teenagers. So we'll bring Kate in. Hi Kate.
Hello.
So you recently released, and you're about to release a second, actually. You released your first fantasy novel.
Yeah.
So how long, and now you're about to release a second, so how long did it take you to write that first novel, Kate?
To actually write it took about a year. And then with the editing and everything that went with it, this second one's been a lot quicker.
Yeah, the first one's always the longest, isn't it? How long's the second one taken you?
4 months.
Wow, you've been cooking on gas.
Mm-hmm.
We're good. Okay, I'm gonna ask you about your writing process. We might as well do that now then. I normally ask it towards the end, but let's ask how much time do you spend writing each day, and do you have a word count aim?
Not so much a word count aim. I sit at my desk and I'm writing for 3 solid hours every day.
Wow.
Obviously with coffee breaks. I need coffee. But I just write, and I think I know the characters so well and the world now so well. It's almost like it's writing itself. So I can sit and just sort of tap away. And I'm getting a draft done pretty quickly now.
So you know the world well. What came to you first? Was it the characters or the world when you were thinking about writing fantasy? It was the world. And how did that come to you? Did you sit down and think, I want this world to be like this, or did you have the vision in your head and put it on paper?
It was a couple of writing exercises and free writing exercises that I did, and my brain put them together. They didn't necessarily make sense together, but my brain put them together, and I started thinking, oh, what would happen if? And it all sort of percolated through from there, but it was sat in my head for about 18 months before I did anything with it.
So tell us a little bit about this world.
It's Earth, but set far, far in the future. There's been a highly evolved civilization that's been destroyed. And it was destroyed by dragons. And everybody ran for caves, for cover. So these communities have developed living underground, effectively. And every now and again, teenagers decide that this is too constricting and I want to get out. And that's where my story starts.
Yeah.
A group of teenagers wanting out. 2 of them make it, avoid successfully being eaten by the wildlife, and rescued by strangers and taken to this place. It's called Portum, and it's a safe haven, and it's protected by dragons.
Yeah, so in your world you have dragons. You had dragon baddies who destroyed the world. Was it one single dragon baddie or a whole range?
A lot of dragon baddies, and they still exist.
Yeah, so you've got dragon baddies who destroyed the world in the first place, and they're still out there waiting to try and destroy everything else again. And then you've got some dragon goodies in this world that your teenage rebels escape to. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. We have tame dragons who work with people. Yeah.
So tame rather than good.
Yes. Oh, yes. There's some characters.
A bit like humans, then, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So once you'd got this world, did you draw it on a piece of paper? How did you?
I do not have those skills.
How did it evolve?
I just see it when I'm a very visual person, and when I close my eyes, I see it. I'm there, and so it's easier for me to describe it. Having a map drawn is on the list of things to be done at some point.
Yeah.
And when I do, I'll go back and I'll put it in all of the books.
Yeah.
And probably have it on the website so people can actually see where things are set out. Yeah. But at the moment, it's just all in my head.
Yeah. But I suppose as this world, I mean, it's probably the world that you developed and obviously you visualize in your head. But that in itself might develop with your imagination, and there might be other bits and pieces to add to it. Is that
it's evolving?
Fair, yeah. Fair summary. Evolving, like all worlds, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so they are very human. The human parts. There's no sci-fi elements, no robots or anything like that.
No, we're very human and low tech at the moment because obviously a lot of people and things got obliterated.
Okay, and then you went on to. So how long did it take you to sort of visualize this world enough to start writing a book set in it?
I say it was sat in my head for about 18 months. And then as I started writing, it started becoming clearer. So it came into focus as I was actually writing the first book, which is probably why it took me quite so long to get it done. Okay.
Yeah, well, I can understand that because it's not an easy thing, is it? World building. I mean, I set mine in the real world and quite easy apart from having to go off and research a place and find out a bit more about it. So you got all that. So you haven't got maps yet,
no.
But you've got some background written down, I would think.
Oh yeah.
In your world. To you anyway, and for you. Does your editor create a style sheet with your world and what it contains?
No, it's all just, it just works. I'm not questioning it, it just works.
You've created it. That's it. Okay, so, and then the characters, where did they come from? So are they young teenagers, old teenagers?
Sort of, I envisage them about 15, 16-ish. Right.
So coming of age type teenagers.
Yeah, and they had to be rebellious from where they come from.
Yeah.
And so as soon as they get out, the little boy's lost. And they're in this strange world that they've been told was unsafe. And they've just developed from there. And then I've peopled the areas around them. I've given them enemies and friends and allowed it to be a proper society, I suppose. Some people like them, some people don't. Some people are jealous of them. Some people wish they'd go back to the caves where they came from, you know. I've tried to make that quite real while allowing them to develop within that community. Yeah,
because they haven't just turned up because they were rescued, weren't they? But in a sense, they've just turned up in this new, already evolving society where probably others have also turned up in the past.
Yeah, and are continuing to do so, yes.
Yeah, and are sort of pecking orders getting a bit, is it?
Pecking order's quite a biggie, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine that with the new society. I'm sort of got, is it Lord of the Flies sort of coming back to me from my younger days. But your world isn't like that.
My world's exciting. It has dragons.
Yeah, your world's lovely and got some nice people in. And are there any adults in this new society? I mean, obviously there were in the caves and there are in the new society.
Yes, it's a proper, fully functioning society. Yeah, there's lots of adults and babies and things.
Old people?
I haven't mentioned old people. We have older people. We have sort of seniors. But I haven't sort of created any retirees or anything. I've got craft masters who are described as grizzled, so they're a lot older.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been there a while then.
Yeah.
And the caves, presumably they just carry on coexisting in the background with their sort of policing. Yeah. Okay.
That's book 3.
That's book 3. Okay. And so the name of your first book is Portum.
That's right.
Which is the New World.
Yes.
And what's your name? What's the name of the second book?
Volans.
And is that a different world, or what's?
No, it means flying in Latin.
Oh, okay.
I had English names for my books, and it caused issues when I looked. People already had these books, or there were major themes in books with dragons that I'd already read, and I had a heart attack when I realised. So Portum was originally going to be called Landing, and so we had a full day renaming everything. Yeah, I just wanted them to stand out.
Yeah, yeah. I like the name Portum, actually. Did you make it up, or did it?
No, it's Latin.
Latin. What does it mean in Latin?
It means portal, safe haven.
Okay.
Which is what Portum is. So,
and
I think it gives you the sensation that you've stepped into a different world.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And your covers do as well, with the dragon on the front. Okay. So what was vital? What was it that you felt was vital to include in your story?
What, you mean apart from the dragons?
Dragons, yeah, and obviously rebellious teenagers. And
yeah, there's got to be that. I want to show them growing and developing. Yeah. And all the pitfalls. They're all full of fire. They want to be out of the caves, and then suddenly they realise that there's a big world out here and there's things that could potentially eat them. And my poor protagonist spends a lot of the time wanting his mum.
Oh, bless you.
I know. I'm horrible. I'm so cruel to them.
Very, very cruel. But then they have to have something that that challenges them, don't they? Otherwise, it wouldn't be an interesting book for.
Well, that's it. You've got to give them something to work on.
Is there anything that you thought you would include but you've scrapped?
Not so far. One character's had a pretty major alteration of what was going to happen to them. So yes, I suppose so. I was going to have the people in the caves rebelling against the dragons, and that's now not going to happen. I was going to have them sort of all got very political, and I wrote myself into a corner and I had to write myself back out of it again. So we've got a big twist, and that's now not going to happen. I'm taking it in a different direction.
I mean, that's worth noting, isn't it? So it's now moved into this outer world rather than and that happens to a lot of authors as the characters develop, and even if you've got do you outline your books? Are you a real plotter? Right on the food?
Half and half. I have an idea and I know what I want to happen and I know where we're going to, but I do let the story tell itself as long as I'm hitting those marks.
Yeah. And obviously you let your characters surprise you along the way, because you think, oh, why have you done that? Or she, what they're up to there, and then it just all comes off onto the page, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And is there anything that you wish you'd included in the start, or are going to include in the future? You don't have to give us any spoilers, but is there anything you sort of want to go back and bring in later on?
I think some of the characters from the very beginning that were in the caves need more work, but I've got plans for that.
Yes, I mean, I felt that when I read the first book, and there was one particular character, and I thought, brat, they didn't get out. Well, I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but there was definitely one that I wanted to get out.
Yeah, no, the others are going to be used.
Yeah. So he or she or they are going to feature in future books.
Yes.
Oh, there's quite a nice little group that you've already got, isn't there, in Portum? A little bit of argy-bargy between a few of them, and you can see things developing in that sense. You're hiding stuff, aren't you? Anything else you can add without spoiling the book for people? Anything you want to say about
Well, you know that Chris gets his dragon at the end of Portum.
Yeah,
that's not a secret.
That's a spoiler, folks. Just
no, you can see that. And then the second one's coming up, and the second one's continuing directly on from where Portum leaves off. And oh, it was a joy. It was an absolute joy to write it. I had such fun. Poor Chris. I don't know if I've put him through the wars, but
that's what protagonists are for, isn't it? We put them through hell, and then we sort of help them find themselves.
All my test readers and editor have absolutely loved it. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. Book 2. And do they have to be read in order?
They don't have to be. They could be standalones. That they do follow on from one another.
So it is better if they're read. Book 1 and Book 2.
Yes, get them
all. And you've now got better tell people, haven't we, that they can sign up for your mailing list and get a free novella. I might do that myself.
Yeah, the prequel.
I want to read the novella and find out what happened beforehand. So just tell people how they can do that.
There's links in the back of the books now, and on my Facebook and Instagram, and you can just click the link to Book Funnel and sign up for the newsletter and get a free copy of Intus.
And have you got Insus? And what does that mean? Intus.
Inside.
I thought it. I actually gathered that.
It's the story of how they got themselves into all this trouble in the first place.
And how long is that book?
It's about 10,000 words. It's only a shorty.
Yeah. Can you? Do you have a website that people can sign up to your newsletter from, or is it?
I have a very basic website. I would advise Facebook.
So go to www.facebook.com/Kate Ridley.
Kate Ridley, author.
I'll put that in the thing below as well. So they can get a nice free fantasy novel which tells you all about this world, which I can't wait to read. So I'm going to be signing up to your newsletter. So we met doing an MA in creative writing. What advice would you give to somebody who wanted to start out writing fantasy?
Get the world building right. It's got to feel as if when you introduce it to readers, everything's in place. And for your characters, everything's normal. Yeah. So the fantastical to the reader is every day to the character. So they're not going to be wandering around going, oh, look, a dragon. Although Chris was, because it was new to him.
Yeah.
It's got to be, well, this is how we do things here. And the reader picks it up. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to do it all at one go. Allow it to unravel as you tell the story of what's actually, what your characters are getting on with. And have real characters. Spend some time with them. And I have conversations with my characters. Does that make me sound a bit weird? But they're like real. They're real. And I can see they become sort of proper 3D rounded people. So it makes them easier to write and more believable to read. But start with the world and make it everything that you need it to be, and have everything in place, the political systems, how people live, what they eat, what goes on. Have that set in place first. Yeah, so if you're thinking of fantasy writing, it's really important then to get that world right to start with. Because I think so. And I suppose you also need to know where that world is. Is it on Earth in the future? Because I guess fantasy can go off into time zones and it can go completely Star Trek, can't it? And just be anywhere. Yeah. So you can go into the sci-fi element, but pure fantasy like yours is more about a world, be it on Earth, with realistic characters. Yeah, it was a photograph. I looked at the photo and I thought, oh, what's happening here? And it just appeared. What photograph? In your head? No, it was in a class at uni. And it was Alex Davis gave out photographs. You had to do free writing, and I got one, and I thought, very obviously highly advanced civilization, and it was all covered in moss and broken down. I thought, what's going on here? And it tied in with an exercise that we'd done the previous year with a different lecturer. And my brain just went, oh, I know, and knitted them together. And this civilization and these people who lived in caves just came together.
So they're very bright, but obviously they have no technology or little technology because actually all that's been destroyed.
It was all destroyed, along with most of the engineers.
Yeah, so actually, although they're bright, they are starting again and having to reinvent the wheel.
We're just inventing electricity
in a very real sense. Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, they've been in the caves for 7 generations, so it's been a while.
Yeah, and that's become the norm for them, as you say. Your characters have got to feel that is normal, apart from the rebellious few who want to get out of there.
That's it.
Who can blame them for that? And how did you determine when you're writing fantasy? Because obviously fantasy can cover the generations. I mean, I quite like yours, and although it's written for younger readers, but in a sense, you can't write older fantasy for younger readers. How do you determine the age group?
I knew I wanted it to be for everybody, really, but I thought if I make sure that it's safe for a younger kid, sort of 10, 12-year-old to read, then it will be safe for everybody to read. Yeah. So there's no swearing, there's nothing dodgy.
No.
Yeah. I'm aware that I'm very careful of my use of language because I want it to be accessible to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you determined you wanted it to be for the younger reader, but also obviously adults. We all do. We all enjoy. I mean, I still enjoy Enid Blyton's Famous Five, so that shows that.
All of those.
Yeah. Well, I certainly read all of them. Goodness knows how many times when I was a kid. Yeah. So that's how you determine that. So we know what's next for you. You've written a second. The launch date is this week. As we record, obviously, this will come out after launch day.
31st of August, the next one's available.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll put the link to that in the thing below, and when this comes out in a week or so's time, people will be able to access that new book as well as the first book, and they can sign up for your newsletter and get a free prequel novella that tells them all about this world, which I can't wait to read. Can you see yourself writing this forever, or is there a finale? Have you got a set number of books in mind?
There's definitely a finale. It'll be 6 or 7 books. So we've had a major plot twist, so that's probably going to make it 7. And after that, we'll see. I think there's a lot of potential for offshoots, if you like, for the different characters who get mentioned but get lost in the main story, the main thrust of the story. I've already got people saying, "Oh, but what happened to this? And what's happening here?" So we'll see.
Yeah,
but I have other ideas for the series, so I'm not sure whether it'll happen or not.
For other ideas for that series or other ideas for other series?
Both. But no, there'll definitely be different series. I'm pretty sure where I'm going with the Portum series, but it surprised me already, so we'll see.
And are you going to call yourself a fantasy writer? Are you going to stick with that genre?
For now. Yeah. For now, but I have ideas for other genres as well, so we'll see.
Yeah. And you would use a different name if you went into other genres?
I would, yeah. I don't want to confuse people.
Yeah, don't be like me and confuse people. I was going to ask you about the particular tropes that you have to include when you're writing a fantasy novel.
Tropes? Well, obviously everything's set on Earth. So something's got to be fantasy, which is where the dragons come in. And other than that, really, I'm trying to keep it as it's the growth of the character. So you've got a real character arc going on, not just with the main characters, but with everybody. And obviously the ever-present danger of dragons attacking.
Yeah.
But it's all the dragons of the fantasy, I suppose.
So the dragons and the world are the fantasy and the futuristic bit, and then for the main part, it's character driven.
Humans are being human.
Okay, so that was a really interesting wander into the fantasy realm, because it's not something that I'm particularly familiar with, and actually I've never read a Harry Potter. Never. I know. Don't look at me like that.
Oh, that's awful.
I have read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I love Lord of the Rings. So yeah, yours, and I do like yours, and would recommend them to parents who themselves and to parents who have children 10 and above.
Thank you.
So it's been an absolute pleasure, Kate. Having you on the.
Been lovely to be here.
Having you on the All Things Books show, which I can never remember the name of, and even though it's my show. And I wish you well with your future writing and with your launch. That was an interesting interview with Kate Ridley on a different theme, because we've moved into fantasy worlds, and Kate really has created an interesting world with and I agree, very interesting characters who you want to know more about and that you do emotionally engage with. So I think Kate's done a brilliant job with her first novel, and I'm sure that as the books progress, they'll get even more interesting and enticing, and she's going to be a very popular author. That's it from me, from the All Things Book Show. If you have enjoyed this show, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find a link to Kate's Facebook page and to her Amazon page below this video. And you can also find a link to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.